In every age, people have asked the same questions. What is the good life? How should we treat one another? What does it mean to be free or virtuous or just? What does it mean to be human? Western moral philosophy for beginners and Selenius Media takes you on a guided journey through the minds that shaped the moral backbone of the West, from the earliest Greek thinkers to the modern age. Lived stories of struggle, ambition, conflict, revelation, all unfolding against the sweep of history. If you've ever wanted to understand philosophy clearly, calmly, and humanly, if you want to know not just what these thinkers argued, but why it mattered, follow Western moral philosophy for beginners today and explore 10 more podcasts at Selenius Media. Aristotle, the ancient Greek philosopher who lived from 384 to 322 BCE, is a towering figure in Western philosophy, particularly known for his explorations of ethics. His work lays the groundwork for how we think about morality, virtue, and the good life. Aristotle's ethical philosophy is primarily encapsulated in his seminal texts, such as Nicomachean Ethics and Eudemian Ethics, where he grapples with questions that continue to resonate today. At the heart of Aristotle's ethical thought is the concept of virtue, which he sees as fundamental to achieving happiness, or what he calls eudaimonia. This notion of eudaimonia is not merely a fleeting pleasure or emotional high. It's a deep, fulfilling sense of purpose and well-being that arises from living a life in accordance with virtue. Aristotle argues that virtues are habits, dispositions to act in ways that help us flourish as human beings. Importantly, he posits that virtues lie between extremes, which he famously refers to as the doctrine of the mean. For example, courage is a virtue that resides between the extremes of foolhardiness and cowardice. This leads us to one of Aristotle's core arguments regarding the process of moral development. He believes that people are not born virtuous, but become so through practice and habituation. This idea is crucial because it places the responsibility for moral character squarely on the individual, suggesting that one can cultivate virtues through conscious effort. Thus, moral education becomes a central endeavor, not just through formal instruction, but through the imitation of virtuous role models and through engaging in community life. In thinking about Aristotle's ideas in the context of modern situations, let's first consider personal ethics. Today's society often emphasizes individual choice, leading some to prioritize immediate gratification over the long-term vision of a well-lived life. Aristotle's emphasis on virtue as a mean suggests a deliberative and balanced approach to personal decisions. For example, in deciding how to manage one's time between work and leisure, an Aristotelian perspective would encourage finding a golden mean. Too much time spent at work can lead to burnout and unhappiness, while excessive leisure can result in a lack of purpose. In practice, Aristotle's ideas push us toward a more thoughtful consideration of how our choices contribute to our overall flourishing. Turning to politics, we observe that Aristotle viewed the state as a natural extension of human community, which forms around shared values and goals. He argued that the role of government should be to cultivate virtue among its citizens. Given contemporary debates about the role of government in promoting social welfare versus individual freedom, Aristotle's ethics invites us to explore whether the law should simply protect individual liberties or actively promote a collective sense of virtue and community. For instance, laws aimed at reducing inequality might be seen as a modern extension of Aristotle's idea that a good society must foster the conditions necessary for citizens to achieve their full potential. In the realm of medicine and healthcare, Aristotle's insights into the importance of virtue can inform contemporary ethical debates around medical practice. His notion that ethical decisions should be formed through experience and informed by the specific situation aligns well with the principles of virtues guiding physicians and caregivers. When doctors engage in the moral complexities of patient care, the emphasis on developing virtuous habits, such as compassion, patience, and respect for patient autonomy, reflects Aristotle's understanding of ethics as a practice nurtured through character. Despite the profound influence of Aristotle's moral philosophy, his ideas are not without criticism. One significant critique stems from modern ethical theories, particularly those emphasizing rights and duties, like Kantian ethics. Critics argue that Aristotle's focus on virtue is too subjective, relying largely on individual temperaments and social contexts, making it difficult to establish universal moral principles. Kantian ethics, on the other hand, seeks to provide a clear, consistent framework for moral action based on rationality, asserting that moral truth is bound by duties that are universally applicable. Aristotle's emphasis on personal development and the context of human flourishing can seem vague or adaptable to varying moral situations, raising questions about objectivity in ethics. Further complicating the discussion, the feminist philosopher Martha Nussbaum has engaged deeply with Aristotelian thought, proposing a modern interpretation that emphasizes a capabilities approach to ethics. She acknowledges the necessity of virtue, but argues for its relevance in a broader framework focused on social justice and human dignity. Nussbaum highlights that Aristotle's ethics require updating to address the contemporary complexities of gender and socioeconomic disparities. To connect Aristotle to earlier figures, we can look back to Socrates, whose commitment to ethical inquiry laid the groundwork for Aristotle's own engagements with moral philosophy. Socrates emphasized the importance of knowing oneself, a theme that resonates throughout Aristotelian ethics. In contrast, moving forward to a later figure, such as Immanuel Kant, we see a fundamental shift in approach. While Aristotle focuses on the development of character through the practice of virtue, Kant emphasizes a deontological approach, prioritizing duty and adherence to moral law as central to ethical behavior. As we contemplate how Aristotle's ethical ideas interweave into our lives, we must consider how fostering virtue can guide our choices in an era characterized by rapid change and ethical ambiguity. Reflecting on personal development in our ambitions and relationships urges us to cultivate not just skills, but also the character that shapes those endeavors. Whether navigating a career path, engaging in community affairs, or addressing interpersonal dynamics, Aristotle's insights remain a vital compass, guiding us toward a life that values not merely success, but a deeply fulfilling existence rooted in virtue and community. As we transition to the second part of this deep dive, let's reflect more deeply on the implications of Aristotle's ideas in addressing the pressing moral dilemmas of our time. How might we integrate this ancient wisdom into our interpretations of justice, our searches for meaning, and our ethical choices across the myriad complexities of the modern world? What does it mean to live well? And how do the virtues we cultivate contribute to the flourishing of ourselves and our communities? Hang on as we begin to explore these mind-bending questions even further. As we journey further into the ethical landscape created by Aristotle, we must delve more specifically into how his teachings address the moral dilemmas of our contemporary world. One of the most pressing applications of his ethical framework lies in the realm of social justice. Aristotle's ideas about the virtuous community can illuminate discussions about fairness and equity in modern society. In his work, Aristotle articulates the notion of distributive justice, which is concerned with how goods and honors should be distributed within a community. He argues that proportionate justice is vital, meaning that distributing wealth or resources should be based on the contributions and merit of individuals within a community, This perspective challenges us to consider how we structure justice systems today. In light of growing wealth disparities and systemic inequalities, Aristotle's framework calls for a thoughtful deliberation about how we can create systems that not only reward individual effort, but also ensure that all have fair opportunities to thrive. For example, when discussing taxation and social welfare, we might reflect on what rules create a virtuous society. Should taxes be proportionate to earnings, or should they be more progressive in nature to reduce the wealth gap? Aristotle would likely advocate for considering the common good, pushing us to weigh our shared values against individual financial autonomy. In a world where social media amplifies voices, fostering community involvement in governance becomes crucial. Moving from socio-political contexts, another modern dilemma relates to technological advances, particularly in artificial intelligence. Today, as we grapple with ethical frames for AI, Aristotle's emphasis on virtue ethics can offer an insightful approach. The development and application of AI technologies often pose questions about accountability, transparency, and moral implications. Should AI systems embody virtuous characteristics, and if so, how do we define those virtues? In a practical sense, ethical AI could mean designing systems that strive for fairness, accountability, and respect for human dignity, ideas that resonate deeply with Aristotelian ethics. By viewing AI through the lens of virtue, developers and policymakers might emphasize creating technologies that not only perform efficiently, but also promote human flourishing, rather than simply maximizing profit or convenience. This intersection prompts a conversation about the role of human values underpinning these technologies. Are we programming systems that mirror virtues such as justice, benevolence, and empathy? Or are we inadvertently encoding biases and self-serving logic? We can also explore Aristotle's teachings in the context of healthcare ethics, a domain that continually faces moral complexities. The principle of phronesis, practical wisdom, highlights that ethical practice must adapt to unique situations rather than rigidly adhere to universal rules. When healthcare professionals confront dilemmas around patient autonomy or end-of-life decisions, they can benefit from Aristotle's counsel to cultivate character and wise judgment. Consider a doctor facing the decision to withhold information from a terminal patient to shield them from distress. The application of practical wisdom, according to Aristotle, would guide the physician to balance the virtues of honesty and compassion. This situation reflects how moral decision-making is rarely black and white, and the doctor's character, formed through virtue, becomes essential in navigating such difficult waters. While discussing the applications of Aristotle's ethics, it's also crucial to acknowledge the critiques that arise from the limitations of his philosophy. One significant concern is that Aristotle's ethical framework may inadvertently support an elitist view of virtue, prioritizing the experiences of a particular class or gender while neglecting those marginalized in society. The emphasis on habituation in moral development can reinforce structural inequalities that inhibit marginalized communities from accessing the same resources or role models that more privileged individuals might encounter. Critics argue that Aristotle's doctrine of the mean, while appealing in its ideals, can be too ambiguous, leaving individuals to shape their moral compass based on subjective interpretations of what constitutes virtue in varying contexts. This can lead to a spectrum of practices that do not necessarily align with an equitable understanding of ethics. As mentioned earlier, theorists such as Nussbaum have challenged and expanded upon Aristotelian ethics by advocating for a capabilities approach, shifting the focus to the fundamental conditions required for human flourishing. Nussbaum asserts that instead of merely cultivating virtues within individuals, our ethical discussions should address the societal structures that enable or inhibit people from realizing their potential. Through this lens, we see a synthesis of Aristotelian virtue ethics with modern considerations for human rights and social justice, bridging the gap between ancient philosophy and contemporary concerns. It's illuminating to connect Aristotle with his philosophical predecessors and successors. With Socratic principles in mind, we see how the pursuit of self-knowledge intertwined with ethical practices shapes ethical responsibility. Socrates emphasized inquiry into the good life, urging individuals to reflect upon their own behaviors as a means to achieve moral clarity. This insistence on introspection can be seen in the foundation of Aristotelian ethics, where understanding oneself and one's own virtues is paramount in cultivating moral character. Looking to Immanuel Kant, we confront a sharp deviation in moral philosophy. Kant's categorical imperative underscores an obligation to act according to principles that we would will to be universal laws, prioritizing duty over the compassionate cultivation of character that Aristotle champions. While Aristotle situates the moral life within the context of community and virtuous habits, Kant constructs an ethical framework that centers strictly on rationality, establishing a potentially rigid dichotomy between right and wrong. When reflecting on these historical connections, we are invited to consider which framework might resonate more in our daily lives. Perhaps there are times when virtue ethics offers the nuanced understanding required in complex situations, especially when rigid rules fail to capture the intricacies of human relationships. Conversely, there are moments where straightforward duties are necessary for accountability and justice, illuminating the merits of both approaches in navigating an ever-evolving ethical landscape. As we ponder how Aristotle's insights can apply personally, we might ask ourselves critical questions about our own values and actions. What does it mean to lead a good life in today's world? In seeking our own flourishing, how can we incorporate virtues like integrity, empathy, and courage into our daily routines? Whether in our interactions with friends, family, or strangers, reflecting on how our choices align with the virtues we aspire to can serve as a guide to leading a more fulfilling existence. Contemplating our roles within broader communities also provokes thought about collective responsibility. In what ways can we cultivate an environment that nurtures virtue in others? As we engage with our workplace cultures, local governments, or social circles, we hold the potential to shape narratives and foster dialogues around ethics that influence the moral fabric of our shared lives. In closing, the enduring nature of Aristotle's ethical philosophy challenges us to strive for a life characterized by virtue and purpose while navigating the complexities that modernity presents. By integrating this ancient wisdom into our contemporary lives, we maintain the opportunity to contribute meaningfully to our communities, acting as both individuals and citizens, guided by a commitment to the common good. As we consider our ethical journeys, let us carry forth the understanding that true flourishing emerges not merely from personal gain, but rather through a deep connection with others, fostering a shared commitment to virtue and justice in our societies. Continuing from the exploration of Aristotle's ethical framework and its relevance to contemporary dilemmas, we can delve deeper into some specific modern applications of his thought, as well as address further implications and criticisms of his views. A particularly compelling area to investigate is the ethical landscape of environmental stewardship, where Aristotle's principles of virtue have significant implications. Aristotle maintains that humans are social and political animals, meaning that our ethical responsibilities extend beyond the individual to encompass our relationships with one another and with the natural world. This perspective can shape our understanding of environmental ethics, suggesting that cultivating virtues such as respect and care for nature are essential for a well-lived life. In our current climate crisis, where ecological degradation is rampant, Aristotle's teachings remind us of the importance of finding balance, a concept central to his doctrine of the mean. When faced with the urgency of environmentalism, the temptation to swing between extremes, either indulging in reckless consumption or advocating for radical austerity, can undermine effective action. Instead, Aristotle would urge a temperate approach that incorporates sustainability into our daily lives without sacrificing our collective well-being or impairing our ability to thrive. For example, individuals can cultivate the virtue of moderation in consumption by making conscious choices about their lifestyle and purchasing habits. This can manifest in small actions, such as reducing plastic use and supporting local, sustainable produce. However, on a societal scale, Aristotle's ideas can challenge us to rethink policies about resources, land use, and conservation efforts, emphasizing that environmental ethics should prioritize not just human benefit, but the flourishing of all beings. Another intriguing application of Aristotle's ethics is in the realm of education and teaching methodologies. Aristotle argues that moral education is fundamental for developing virtuous character. Today, we often see educational systems that emphasize standardized testing and quantifiable outcomes, which can detract from holistic moral development. Teachers and educators who are aware of Aristotle's ethical philosophy might inspire a curriculum that focuses not just on academic achievement, but also on cultivating virtues like compassion, integrity, and respect for others. For instance, a classroom that fosters discussions about ethical dilemmas in literature, history, or current events can help students practice discerning the virtues relevant to their own lives. By modeling virtuous behavior, educators can serve as role models for their students, demonstrating how to engage thoughtfully with the world. This practice reflects Aristotle's assertion that moral character is developed through habituation, as students learn to internalize the values espoused by their teachers and peers. However, Aristotle's emphasis on virtue ethics also raises questions about the implications of character-based education in a rapidly changing global landscape. Critics may argue that focusing too heavily on individual virtue can detract from addressing systemic issues that contribute to social and educational inequities. A student from a marginalized background may aspire to cultivate virtues, but if institutional barriers remain unaddressed, they may lack the opportunity to exercise those virtues in meaningful ways. In this light, discussions surrounding Aristotle's ethics can benefit from integrating considerations of social justice and institutional reform, allowing educators to recognize that promoting virtue must occur alongside efforts to dismantle inequitable structures. Furthermore, contemporary ethical discussions about bioethics and the development of medical procedures can also be enriched by Aristotelian principles. A pressing example is the debate surrounding gene editing and CRISPR technology, which has the potential to enable significant medical advancements, but also raises profound ethical questions. Drawing from Aristotle's emphasis on practical wisdom and the finite characteristics of humanity, one can approach such developments with caution, ensuring that our pursuits in medical science do not compromise the virtues that promote human flourishing. For example, as scientists explore editing genes to eradicate genetic diseases, they must consider the broader ethical implications. Manipulating the very building blocks of life invites a discussion about the definition of normal and the values associated with perfection. Aristotle would assert that our goal should not merely be to pursue outcomes that maximize medical advancements, but also to reflect on how our choices align with the virtues we wish to embody in society. This aspect of practical wisdom entails engaging in a dialogue about the impact these scientific innovations will have on our sense of community, identity, and moral responsibility. looking beyond the immediate implications of ethical questions. It is also essential to consider how Aristotle's insights resonate within burgeoning technologies, especially concerning artificial intelligence and machine learning. As we navigate the complexities of creating intelligent systems, we may find Aristotle's call for a virtuous character particularly prophetic. The virtue of responsibility is key in discussions about who is accountable when AI systems make decisions that impact human lives. Moreover, is it possible to instill virtue into a system that operates on algorithms and data? Here, Aristotle's notion of phronesis, practical wisdom, can serve as a guiding principle for developers and policymakers alike. As we build and deploy AI technologies, we must engage in careful deliberation that reflects on human experiences, cultural nuances, and ethical implications. For instance, as AI systems are increasingly employed in decision-making processes, should we embed values such as empathy and fairness into their programming to reflect our aspirations for a just society? Consider a scenario where AI plays a role in hiring decisions. If the algorithms are trained primarily on existing data without an emphasis on fairness or equity, they may unwittingly perpetuate biases present in their training sets. By inviting diverse perspectives into the conversation, drawing from different fields, disciplines, and backgrounds, developers can foster an environment where the virtues of integrity and justice guide technological advancements, imperfect though they may be. However, despite the rich contributions of Aristotle's ethical framework, one cannot overlook the inherent tensions in his thought, particularly when addressing issues of modern relevance. Critics from various disciplines question whether a virtue-based ethics is appropriately equipped to handle complex moral challenges, especially those involving competing interests. Just as Martha Nussbaum critiques the elitism present in Aristotle's original formulations, others argue that his focus on individual character fails to sufficiently address collective moral responsibility. This leads to thoughtful engagement of contemporary theories that prioritize rights and justice over virtue. Feminist philosophers, for instance, challenge Aristotelian ethics for its perceived gender bias, advocating for an ethical approach that acknowledges empirical realities and social contexts that often overlook the lived experiences of women and marginalized groups. Such critiques underscore the necessity of evolving Aristotelian ideas, urging us to consider the diverse lenses through which ethics can be viewed, aligned with the breadth of moral experiences in society today. Additionally, Aristotle's philosophy can appear ethnocentric, as his conception of virtue is shaped by the cultural and social milieu of ancient Greece. In our increasingly globalized world, we must interrogate how different cultures conceptualize virtue, morality, and flourishing. Intercultural perspectives benefit from incorporating multiple lenses and ethical traditions into discussions about the good life, rather than relegating them to the margins of moral discourse. In this light, engaging with Aristotle's virtue ethics alongside other ethical frameworks can foster a more comprehensive understanding of morality. By integrating his notions of practical wisdom with considerations for social justice, rights, and accountability, we can navigate the complexities of ethical dilemmas in diverse contexts more effectively. This synthesis empowers us to maintain the spirit of Aristotelian ethics while fostering inclusivity, recognizing that moral considerations must extend beyond traditional boundaries to reflect the lived experiences of all individuals. Lastly, as we wrap our discussion and reflect on the broader implications of Aristotle's ethics, we must consider on a personal level how his teachings invite us to rethink our own lives. Every moment presents an opportunity to cultivate virtues that promote our flourishing and that of those around us. Whether it be through acts of kindness in our communities, striving for integrity in our personal and professional relationships, or participating thoughtfully in civic life, Aristotle's insights can serve as a compass guiding our actions. and facing the choices of everyday life, we can reflect upon what it means to embody virtues such as courage, compassion, and wisdom. As we engage with the complexities of modern existence, let us draw inspiration from Aristotle's understanding of ethics as a practice that requires continual effort, reflection, and adaptation. For Aristotle, moral development is a lifelong journey, one that embraces the messiness of human experience while aiming for a life well lived. Whether we are in the realm of technology, politics, healthcare, or education, remembering that our moral choices contribute to the broader tapestry of community can enrich our ethical pursuits. Ultimately, cultivating a life infused with purpose and virtue is not just an individual quest. It is about fostering a collective environment where all can flourish. As we navigate the waters of a rapidly changing world, let us carry forth Aristotle's legacy, striving to create a society where virtue guides our actions and enriches our shared existence.
Midnight rails under silver moon, dusty boots on a winding road. A shadow's the only friend I've known since she packed up and let me go. Empty whiskey bottle on the seat, her laugh still echoes in my bones. Saddle's heavy with memories. I ride alone where the wind still blows. Nowhere else to be, nowhere else to be, nowhere else to be. Nowhere else to be, nowhere else to be, nowhere else to be. Sunrise paints the horizon gold, but it don't warm a lonesome soul. Every town I pass feels half her size. Every trail's haunted by goodbye. I whisper prayers to open skies, hoping someday my heart'll find a brand new path beyond the pain, where broken hearts can heal in time. Nowhere else to be, nowhere else to be, nowhere else to be. Nowhere else to be, nowhere else to be.